So this video is intended for people who live with complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and are currently struggling with relationships, whether that be seeking them or maintaining them. So you can be in a relationship and struggling, or you can be single and struggling to find a relationship. But either way, I hope this video helps you out. And even if you don't have complex PTSD, I suppose this video can be sort of helpful. But before we get into it, I just want to address two things real quick. Number one is a little bit about me. I'm Toshi. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD when I was 17. I have been in trauma-based cognitive behavioural therapy for more or less a year now. And according to my therapist, I am coming up to the end of my time in trauma therapy. During that time, I feel like I have learned and grown and just struggled a lot, but in a good way. It's helped me improve myself both physically and mentally, and just improve my life in general. I 100% recommend that you go to trauma therapy, because ultimately for me anyway, that has been the most helpful thing, is trauma therapy. Obviously self-help books and all of that are good, but trauma therapy is probably the best thing you could do for yourself if you live with complex PTSD. Second thing I want to point out is I am not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a doctor, a therapist, anything like that. I'm just a patient. So this video is going to be from a patient's perspective, not the perspective of a medical professional. It is important to get all of your medical advice from professionals, but this video is not intended to replace medical advice. This video is just intended for people to get the perspective of another patient, another person living with this disorder, and how to sort of deal with relationships when you live with it. So the first bit of advice I have is stop stressing and overthinking as much. And I know this is a lot easier said than done for most people, and I'm well aware that this can be relevant and true and helpful for people who don't live with complex PTSD. The reason it is on my list is because if you have complex PTSD, you are a lot more likely to overthink and stress about things because you have a trauma-based disorder. You can't really handle stress as well as people who don't have trauma most of the time. And examples of this that I want to give, at least from my experience, because I can't speak on behalf of other people, are things like, just because your partner is going on a night out with their friends doesn't mean they're going to cheat on you. Just because your partner hasn't really been speaking to you online for the last couple of days doesn't mean they don't love you anymore and that they're going to break up with you. They could be busy with work, they could be tired, they could be going through their own stuff. It's very easy to go from 0 to 100 real quick in terms of thoughts and ideas. But you need to remember that a lot of your thoughts and ideas aren't based on what's currently happening in the present moment, but are actually based on what's happened to you in the past, which is still affecting you today. My second bit of advice is to work on your emotional reactions. It can be very, very easy for you to get stressed out and then lash out, or for you to get very upset and then start breaking down. And this can be true for a lot of people, but if you have complex PTSD, it's usually a whole lot worse for you. What's helped me in my personal experience living with this is if I've noticed that I'm getting really stressed out and angry and emotional and upset, I don't like to speak to people because I tend to lash out and say and do things that I regret. I say some really mean things sometimes, and obviously I don't mean them. It's just because I'm dysregulated and I'm stressed out and I'm overwhelmed and I'm just reacting in a way that I shouldn't be reacting because of my disorder. And the best advice that I can give you is just to take yourself somewhere you feel comfortable. My place is usually my bedroom, and do whatever you usually do to help calm you down. That can be reading a book, smoking a joint, watching some TV, listening to some music, breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, whatever helps you calm down, do that. Obviously, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating for your partner and people around you if you don't really want to speak to them because you're dysregulated, but it's important for you to help them understand that you're not a person that people should be around when you are dysregulated and you are overwhelmed and you are emotional, and ultimately it is for the betterment of your mental health and theirs. And if they can't understand that, then maybe you should probably question whether or not the relationship is worth it anyway, in my opinion. My third bit of advice is that you aren't different, so stop acting like it. And what I mean by that is it can be very, very easy for you to feel like you're different from everyone, like you're sort of isolated and alienated from the rest of society. And I've dealt with this quite a lot. I struggle with this quite a bit. The way that I've always described it personally is that it feels like I'm an alien that was sent to Earth in a pod, like those the Super Saiyan, like the Saiyan pods in Dragon Ball, and I've been forced to try and blend in with other people. That's what it feels like for me. Obviously, that's not true, that's not accurate, that's not reality, but that is sort of the feeling of isolation that you get with complex PTSD. But it is very, very important for you to remember that you are normal. You are a normal, everyday human being. You are just like everyone else. You have just been through things that other people haven't been through. PTSD is a normal reaction to abnormal events. You are a normal person. You are not different. You are not isolated from everyone else. You are not some form of socially isolated creature that's never going to have friends and relationships and just should be alone forever. You've just been through things that other people haven't been through, and it's had a major effect on you and the way you see yourself, the world, society, and other people. And if you feel different, chances are you're going to act different. And what I mean by that is, if you feel like nobody wants to talk to you and that you can't have friends and relationships, chances are you're not going out of your way to meet people and speak to people. You're sort of putting yourself aside from everyone. You're not trying to speak to people. And from the perspective of someone else, this just looks like you don't want to be spoken to. And if you look like you don't want to be spoken to, people aren't going to speak to you. So you just keep yourself in this never-ending cycle of, oh, I feel different, I'm not like everyone else, so I'm just going to try and avoid everyone else. Therefore, people are going to pick up on that and they're going to avoid you because they can see that you don't want to be approached, even if secretly you do. So just remember that you are not different. It's just the things you have been through that are different to everyone else. And if you keep acting like you're different and like you're some form of socially isolated, forever alone creature, people aren't going to want to speak to you because they're going to pick up on that and they're not going to want to bother you or disturb you. My fourth bit of advice is that you need to remember that people are human and they're going to make mistakes, and not every mistake that is made is going to be a personal attack on you. Examples I can give are, just because your partner smashed one of your favourite cups on accident doesn't mean they secretly hate you and want the relationship to end. Just because your partner forgot to call you or text you at a certain time when they said they would doesn't mean that they don't love you anymore and that they want to break up. People are human, they're going to make mistakes. Not every mistake made is some form of major, massive attack on you. And it's very easy to feel that way. When small mistakes are made and small things happen, it is very easy for people with complex PTSD to pick up on it and overthink about it, because your brain is basically wired at this point to constantly pick up on signs of danger and alert and safety and hazards, etc., etc. So you're going to pick up on things a lot more than other people, and you're going to overthink it most likely. So you need to remember that people are human, mistakes are going to be made, and not every mistake that is made is some purposeful attack towards you. My fifth piece of advice is to explain your triggers and your symptoms to your partner to help them understand how they can help you. Now, very important to remember that although your trauma is not your fault, it is your responsibility to deal with. It is up to you to deal with your mental health, to get better, to improve, etc., etc. But obviously your disorder is going to have an effect on your relationship, and it's important you sit down and speak to your partner about this. So if something that they do or say is bothering you and is triggering you, it's important to sit them down and let them know, like, hey, I don't really like it when you speak to me like this, or could you perhaps not say things like this, or could you not really play that type of music around me? You know, anything that triggers you and reminds you of your trauma and sets you off, it is important to let your partner know and to communicate with them and tell them, because your partner is not psychic, right? So if they accidentally trigger you, then you need to explain you've been accidentally triggered and how it affects you, how it affects the relationship, and it's something that you need to work on together. And if they're purposefully triggering you, you should not be with them anyway. And my sixth bit of advice is that you need to learn to trust yourself and to trust other people. It is very easy to get these sort of intrusive thoughts, how everyone hates me and I'll never be good enough and there's nothing I can say or do to be worthy of love, so I might as well just stop bothering, stop trying, and just go to bed and just lay down all day and rot. Stop. Like, it is very easy to have all these thoughts, but they're not true. Most of your thoughts and your reactions aren't based on what's currently happening in the present moment and aren't based on what's actually true. They're based on what you've been through and what you've been programmed and forced and wired to believe. You need to remember that you are a normal, everyday person. You're trying your best, you're trying to live life, you're trying to get a relationship, you're trying to do things the right way. And trust other people as well. Just because people have hurt you in the past does not mean that everyone you meet in the future or in the present is going to hurt you or is planning to hurt you. It can be very difficult to feel that way if you've had certain experiences, particularly domestic violence and abuse. But it's not true. Not everyone you meet is going to be a dick, even though it can feel like it sometimes. My seventh and final bit of advice is, don't be too much. If you have complex PTSD, chances are you are very, very emotional. And not just negatively, right? I don't mean that you can be very angry or very upset, or very depressed, whatever. You can be very loving, very caring, very affectionate, because chances are you're not used to receiving that type of affection and that type of feeling towards you. So you can project it really easy onto other people because you want to treat people the way you've never been treated before. You want to treat people the way you wish people treated you. This is a great quality to have. This is an amazing trait to have as a person. However, don't do it too soon, right? That person you met 2 weeks ago, you don't love them. You don't want to marry them and have a family with them, right? It can be very easy for you to fall in love very easily, to get emotional and compassionate very easily, infatuated very easily. But you need to remember that this is not love, and telling someone that you love them 2 weeks into knowing them is not cute or adorable. It's actually kind of bothersome to a lot of people, and it can be quite creepy. You feel a lot of emotions. You feel very intense, strong emotions, more so than the average person. So you need to explain that to the person, remind yourself of that, and find a way to sort of dealing with those feelings rather than love bombing a person that you've literally more or less just met. And I've made this mistake. Loads of you have probably made this mistake. It's very common in people with complex PTSD to be very affectionate to the point where it's over the top, and it can bother a lot of people. You need to remember to just take things slow, one step at a time, and just do things the right way, whatever feels right for both you and the other person, not just you and not just them. It's about working together. And all of that being said, this is the end of my video. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all found this useful and helpful, and maybe even a little bit entertaining. Who knows? But important to remember that as great as it is to get advice from online, from both medical sources and from patients, I believe the greatest thing you can do for yourself if you have complex PTSD is to get professional treatment. Go to trauma therapy, do the, I don't know if it's EMDR or I believe it's EDMR, but I'm not too sure. I've never done it. I think I did one session and I didn't really like it. I always found that the trauma-based CBT is what worked for me. But get medical professional help. That is your best option, I promise you, even if it doesn't feel like it. All of that being said, hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. This is Toshi signing out, and take care of yourselves.